Thank you, Lou, and good morning, everybody. My name is Lisa Humphries. I am the Chief Operating Officer for Europe, Middle East and Africa at GroupM, which is WPP's media business.
And I'm Roy. I'm the Global SVP of Product and Platform at WPP, and you'll find out a little bit later why a guy with a background in psychology is going to be talking to you about AI. It'll be a little weird, but we'll get through it.
So we've done the introductions, so I'm going to click straight on. It's probably worth talking a little bit about why Roy and I present this type of presentation in this way. I'm an ops person, so I'm really focused on how we organise and run our business and how we service our clients. And Roy's focused on the technology, but we really see artificial intelligence as unlocking huge benefit for our clients. And if we can't get our organisation behind that and working in the right kinds of ways, then we're not going to unlock that. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as we move through the presentation. I'm supposed to do a joke here about how... Sorry, I wasn't just reading the auto cue, I was actually supposed to say that. I was supposed to do a joke here about Royce being so smart that he's actually been replaced by a fully sentient AI. But we learnt in the last session that AI is really good at spotting patterns, and I don't think the outfit would have been selected by AI. So you're in the hands of two...
Should I go?
Capable humans. No, please stay, because I cannot do your section. But what we wanted to talk about here, and what you can see up on the slides is behind me, is really the fact that this has been exploding, particularly for the last 12 months. I'm sure everyone in this room is talking about it all the time in their day jobs, and probably quite overwhelmed in terms of how you can harness and use some of the AI tools that we're going to talk about today. The first one of which... ChatGPT-4, you'll all be very familiar with this. Whenever we talk about this, 100 million users, really, really big stat. Over 1 billion searches a day was mentioned in the last presentation. This was 310 days ago. It's not even a full year since this was launched, and I feel like I've been talking about it 100 times a day for the last 310 days. So we expect everyone to keep up with these types of technologies, but really, if you think about a lot of the technologies we use within our organisations, this is really new, and it's moving really, really quickly. The most important thing to take from this is artificial intelligence getting a user interface. We've been using these types of technologies for a really long time, particularly within our organisation, and it is changing the way that we work and has been doing for years. But really now, everyone in the general public has access to these tools. Everyone has an opinion on it, and so there is a lot more conversation about how these things are working. We've been talking about it, particularly in our organisation, I'm sure you have too, that you need to be a prompt engineer. I like to think of prompt engineering as asking good questions, but you do need a level of technical capability to know how you answer those questions to get to a good answer. Organisations thinking about how they train their people. It is really important, and you do need to do it, but it can be incredibly overwhelming. So what we wanted to do was just take a step back a little bit and talk to you about how we think about it at WPP. And really, this is about technology enabling our people. It's not about every single one of our 110,000 people across the globe becoming technologists. That's not our ambition. They're very good at other things, but we want them to understand how they can interact. So really thinking about what the user interface is really important. And for those of you that are familiar with WPP, you will know that our mission is to be the most creative transformation company on the planet. But artificial intelligence is also colliding a lot of our worlds. And if you saw a slide like this from us 3, 4, 5 years ago, it would look very different. The types of communications, commerce experience, all wrapped in data and technology that we're using now is light years ahead of even 6 months ago. And actually, Roy and I have been working on a project recently with a very large global client where we give them 2 weekly updates on the technology changes that Roy and his team are making. So really, this stuff is moving extremely quickly. The thing I would think about when you're looking at something like this is just in your day jobs, how much of these worlds are converging. And so if you think about what's happening with generative search, for example, and where the AI is creating generative search responses, it's pulling from scientific studies on your products. It's pulling from influencers' TikTok videos and transcribing them. It's pulling from your own websites. It's also pulling from user reviews. It's pulling and generating from so many different sources. So everything you can see represented here are, coming together much more closely. And I think something we talk to our clients a lot about is how you think about that within your organisation, how you bring those disciplines closer together so you understand what potentially AI is doing in the wild with the content that you're creating. And when it comes to AI-generated content, hopefully you've seen a lot of these cases. We're not going to show you them in full today, otherwise we could do a full presentation just going through videos. But we are going to focus on one of them. And actually, it's one that's really close to my heart. It's the Nestle case for the milkmaid. I'm just going to say one thing before we play this video, because we talked earlier about prompt engineering. This case is really about how quickly we can get to market by using the right types of artificial intelligence technologies to create something like the work you're about to see. However, it doesn't remove the need for art direction, and it doesn't remove the need for creatives. So I think there's over 1,000 specific prompts that went into creating this work, and someone who's really smart and really creative needs to be able to do that. This is not, a 2-line prompt into GPT-4 creating this work, but I'm going to let it speak for itself.
L'un des chefs-d'œuvre nationaux, la laitière de Vermeer, a dévoilé de nouveaux détails.
L'IA a extrapolé en fait le décor qu'il y a autour du célèbre tableau de Vermeer.
Dernière pub réalisée grâce à l'intelligence artificielle par notre célèbre marque de produits laitiers.
I'm going to click through. There we go, I'm safe now. I've clicked through the videos, it's not going to start playing again. I think a really interesting quote from the ECD, who was responsible for that campaign, was the hardest part of that job was choosing between the 4 AI-generated pieces of content and deciding which one was the best. So it's not doing everything for us just yet, but I think really thinking about how you can get creatives focused using this technology and then bringing the areas that they're really, really strong in. The eye for creative is something that AI isn't taking over on just yet. And when we think about the way that we work as an organisation with our clients, really we're thinking about moving from what we've traditionally done, which is providing the what, so the campaign, the PR, the creative technology, potentially, to really thinking about how we create the how. And that's really important for us if we're going to scale this type of technology and move it away from being a single campaign activation that maybe uses AI as an integral part of the creative ideation into really becoming the way that we work as an organisation. And Roy's going to talk a little bit more about that later. This enables us to move from the peaks and troughs and wondering why did a particular campaign work really well, why did another one not work really well, to putting in underlying technologies, to really harnessing the power of your data as an organisation. We're not going to go into that in detail today, but very happy to talk about that later if anyone would like to really make sure that you're driving the right insights. And AI is super, super good at doing that, but you've got to be set up and structured in the right way. We've also got to think about limitations, and there are lots of limitations to this creative. We heard earlier it's very good at spotting patterns, it's getting better at being predictive, less good at generating hands. I don't know if anyone has seen all the images of six-fingered hands. So AI can hallucinate, and I spoke earlier about what's happening with generative search and generative search results. And, you know, do we know if AI is generating a result that is accurate and true? That's a really big question. So we think about those things all the time. Much more obvious and in some ways more straightforward are things about who owns IP and training data. I'm sure everyone is aware how careful you have to be, the data that's being trained. We've all seen some terrible examples of, you know, images of doctors all looking a very specific and certain way and images of nurses looking a very different but specific way. So we've got to be really conscious of that. But also, who owns the IP? Are you training your AI on content that's generated by other people who own that IP? Who owns the IP of the output? And this is an example with Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola have done some really interesting work, and actually Roy works with them a lot, where they actually put tools into the hands of people to create content using their brands. But actually, if you're generating things with AI tools that use other brand trademarks, you are infringing on IP. And then ethical considerations. And this was the Michael Schumacher example of an AI-generated interview with him that ran in a magazine earlier this year in Germany and received a lot of negative PR. And, you know, just because you can do something with artificial intelligence doesn't mean you should. Our way of viewing this, because wrapping your arms around all of these things is super complicated, is we really focus on how we partner with the best people in the world to be able to enable us to support our clients and make sure that we're giving the right advice. And Roy's going to talk a bit more about how we do that now.
Great. So this is where I get the handover when we start talking about the technology, the partners we work with, and all of the stuff that we do with that. Now, when we start working with companies like NVIDIA and Google and so on, we go straight into the foundational technologies that allow things to happen, right? And that is extremely difficult stuff, and that is very much oriented towards the engineering, the models, and so on. I am not going to bore you with any of that stuff today, because that's not where the application of AI is going to happen. The other thing that happens is that gets in the way of applying AI are all of those debates around, should it be human in the loop? We heard this morning a little earlier about computer in the group. Is AI going to augment the person? Is it going to replace people? Are we going to have ethical issues? So I'm going to ignore all of that and just look at things from the behavioral perspective of the application of technology to being able to do your job. Because that's essentially what we need to figure out, right? We keep going from the technology outwards and trying to figure out all of the application after looking at what the tech is, what it does, and try to identify it there. What I want to do instead is go the other way around. Let's look at the behavior of people and the way that they do their jobs, and then let's start seeing how AI, technology, data, and all of that stuff is going to fit into that perspective, rather than trying to shoehorn it everywhere because it's the cool thing that came out, 310 days ago, apparently. So what we did was we started mapping all of our services. So we looked at our service offering instead of starting the process with looking at our technology stack, right? And we looked at everything that we do for our clients, for ourselves, and how we go from imagination to representation, how we create something that looks nice as a core creative idea, then how we go from a concept to an asset. We've got a really great idea, amazing. How does it work as a banner ad, right? It can be that much of a divergence between the core creative idea and the final execution. And then the asset to the activation, which is, so where are we going to put this thing? What is the context within which a person is going to receive it? And those are the three main chunks of where we apply technology so that we enable all of these things. And from there, we start figuring out how we're going to apply tech, how we're going to take any tool from a generative AI chat all the way to an advanced kind of system that's able to create a metaverse so that you can create the ads there without having to go and do some filming or shooting. How do we apply all of these things to the stuff that you're seeing? And how do we determine how much should be done by the human and how much should be done by the system itself? And to do that, and I talked about the whole psychology thing a little earlier, we look at something that we're calling the augmentation gradient. The augmentation gradient basically figures out, forget about the technology. Is a human being getting involved in the task or in the decision, helping this or making it worse? That's it. Forget about the tech, forget about AI, forget about data, forget about all of that. Is including a human being in the decision a good idea or a bad idea? Is it going to help or is it going to take us backwards? Are you going to add empathy to something that requires empathy, or are you going to add bias to a place that should be unbiased? Talk to anyone about forecasting and so on, and they'll tell you it's better to let the computer do the model. The moment you introduce a human, your forecast becomes garbage, because our hope that something's going to get better means that all of our forecasts are going, way beyond what they should be, and that's why targets get missed and so on. Well, if you just let the computer do its job, it'll give you a proper forecast with 3 scenarios, and you can figure out which one you want to bank on. On the other hand, you've got stuff that require a lot of empathy. How are you going to generate insights from the data? How are you going to relate to the human being? How are you going to create a core creative idea that's really going to resonate? All of that requires more humans. So creative development, strategic campaigns, insight generation, extremely empathetic tasks. While the other side, when we start talking about budget planning and tracking, introduce a human and it's going to go to shit, right? So what we need to do is understand on that gradient what's going on. And then we figure out, are we going to augment the human or are we going to automate the task? It's really that simple. The human is adding a lot of value. Make the human better. The human's getting in the way. Automate the task and let the computer do its job. And then we take the different tools that we have, whether they be developed by WPP or third party, for anyone who's used Miro for whiteboarding, we start figuring out how we're going to add value to the different parts. And by using this augmentation gradient, we make it more about humans performing their jobs and then the AI being applied into that process to be able to make it happen. And so job number 1 stops being the implementation of technology. Job number 1 becomes, how are we going to upskill our people? Because if I am augmenting a person that does not know what they're doing, then I'm going to augment something very poor in quality. So the first step is to understand how to improve the human beings that are working with us through programs like what Kat is working on. She's our Senior Director of Interactive Design, and she works with all of these people, and we'll hear what she has to say for 30 seconds here.
First time this year, we are hosting WPP's Creative Technology Apprenticeship Program. We are going to be producing the next pool of talent that can answer these briefs on virtual production and really the briefs that we don't know about yet. So it's not just training people on the newest skills, but training people on how to learn the newest skills regardless of what they are.
Right. We're not just training people on the newest skills, because if we trained them on that before ChatGPT came out, then they'd become already obsolete. That would be a very, very bad strategy on training. We need to train them on how to learn once the new technology comes through, how to be able to adapt, and how to be augmented by the actual stuff, right? The second thing we need to do is give them an environment where they can thrive. And for this, we're going to talk about undoing the library card effect. This usually works a little bit better when I'm talking to the Americans, because they're very familiar with their library cards, and they get taken to the library when they're young, at school, and so on. Anyone with a library card here? Cool. Anyone who's gone to the library in the last year and picked up a book? That's impressive. Great. That's really good, because you're going there and you're going to the actual data. But that's not the majority of the room. Anyone here think the Earth is flat? No? Fantastic. The follow-up question's the kicker here. Anyone in the last year, or 3 years, or whatever, consumed information about the Earth being flat? A video, any? more than the people that went to the library. So that's the issue that we've got here, right? You've got extremely robust, fantastic data sitting in a place, and then you've got garbage data that is contextualized and served to you with clickbaity titles, so you open them. And so what happens is the consumption of technology and data is more related to its contextualization than it is to its robustness. And for us to be able to apply that gradient that we talked about before, we need to create an environment where the good data is surfaced to you at the right time so that you can pull it and start using it. And that's the challenge we took. Now, I've only got like 5 minutes left, but when we're done with this, if you want to talk to me about this equation, it's really interesting. It's called the motivation expectancy theory. And it says that to motivate a person to do something, it is a function of expectancy, instrumentality, and valence. Expectancy is, can I do it? Instrumentality is, will I get rewarded? And valence is, do I like the reward? So if Lisa told me, Roy, if you jump over that chair, I'll give you a piece of chocolate, the 3 things that are going through my mind are, can I jump over the chair? Do I trust Lisa to give me chocolate? And do I like chocolate at all? And so between developing the environments that we're talking about and setting up motivational structures within them for people to be able to use them, we're able to start harnessing the power of AI by setting it up in a way where it is an augmenter to the people that are doing the jobs in a digital environment that's set up for it. And that's the way that we work. That's the way that WPP works. That's the way that we work with our clients. That's the way that we deploy AI to everybody at scale. Because if I expect everyone to go and do their own research, they're going to be using the wrong models, the wrong systems, the wrong processes, the wrong all of that. What I need to do is go, sit with Lisa, understand from an operational point of view, how are people performing their jobs? And then I will go back and lay out the gradient, understand the tools, understand which tools are going to help them do their jobs, and then deploy it for them on this thing that my team built over the last couple of years called WPP Open, which is a virtual digital environment for people to log into and do, and this is what you see over here, they're able to follow their processes, they're able to perform their jobs phase by phase and step by step. But every time they're taking one of those steps, I can do what the flat Earth information was doing. I can surface that tidbit of information. I can add that link. I can add that connection to the tool that they are meant to be using when they are doing that step. And that way we're able to align our tech and data and our AI to the process and tasks, which allows us to augment our people by integrating AI into the way that they work on a daily basis. This is how we work as an organization, and this is how you can harness AI at scale. Or else you're going to end up with a bunch of debates about when should we use this, what do we do with it, let's do a proof of concept, let's do all of that. No. Let's augment the people through a process and task alignment, and then let's figure out how to bring in stuff like Imagine, which is our AI studio that combines all of the Google Imagen stuff with DALL-E, with Midjourney, with all of that into a single place that I can then grab each one of these capabilities and I can surface them through Open while people are working. And that allows us to implement at scale and do stuff like this, and that's how we know that it's working. So that's pretty much the conclusion of what we're trying to say here, right? If you're going to take one message out of all of this is don't rush into the technology and the AI stuff. Focus on the operationalization, the fundamentals of how your people are going to work, and then sit with your technology team and understand how to map the tech to that process based on something like the augmentation gradient if you want to do that. And start plugging them in so that then you can start using systems that combine all of the different stuff into a system. This is something you can talk about with your tech team so that you can set it up. That way, the distribution of AI within your organization will grow a lot faster, right? And that's the way that we want to implement it for everybody, because this is a strong belief for anyone who's read Neuromancer or any books by William Gibson. He's the guy who coined the term cyberspace. The problem with technology in the future isn't that we don't have enough of it right now. It's that we don't know how to distribute it evenly to everyone who needs to work on it.